Good morning, friends. Today we're having our first webinar under I Thought Wealth. The topic is managing risks in your investment portfolio. Every portfolio is unique, it is built to a certain market context. The market context keeps changing, the portfolio also keeps changing. It's important that an investor aligns his portfolio regularly to the market context. And if he has the skill, keeps his portfolio a little ahead of the market context. By doing that, our risk management will be superior. You will not need to worry too much about events in the market, and you will be able to take your portfolio ahead in times when the markets are in difficulty. If you're one of those who managed to buy a lot of equity in March, April, May during those very difficult times of lockdown, it's primarily because you had the financial capacity, you had the risk capacity, and you had the emotional bandwidth. For having these three attributes, you're richly rewarded during the last 12 months. The reward is for this capacity. The reward which equity gives is not necessarily for our ability to pick stocks. Effectively, the difference between somebody who has that ability and somebody who doesn't have that ability is vast. They can still have the same stock picking capacity. I bring before you an example of somebody whom I would look up to in my early years of investing for his stock ideation skills. He was a brilliant man. He could come up with 100 stocks, and if you studied the 100 stocks, you will find that 75 will be very good stocks. But if you look at how he managed to translate this into results, one could sense a serious problem. That problem was because he did not manage his risk capacity well, his financial capacity well, and maintain adequate emotional stability. Despite being a great stock picker, the lack of these three skills or the lack of these three attributes greatly affected his investing to the point that his returns were not impressive. Importantly, he had undertaken numerous investment actions. He would buy, sell, and do a lot of things in all these 75 good stocks. And yet the outcome would be bad. Buying a good stock high and selling it low to buy another stock happened so many times. And then the stock he sold would go up and the stock he bought would come down. Mind you, I am talking about somebody whose stock picking skills I respect to this day. As an investment ideator, he was brilliant. But the way he managed risks was not really adequate. It was not good. Now, this has to be addressed. And it has to be addressed in both good times and in bad times. If you had these attributes in March of 2020, April of 2020, you invested in the market, and today you are seeing good times. Good times brings you a different kind of a problem, which I would call as a happy problem. You can't respond the same way you reacted in 2020 to opportunity in 2021, because the nature of opportunities are vastly different. The risks are vastly different. Your financial capacity is much higher actually, and your emotional capacity is probably now riding on the success of 2020. This calls for a lot of adaptive skills. You need to now change yourself. That is the happy problem before you. You showed courage at a time when it was rare, it was not common. You are rewarded richly for building on that courage in 2020. And come 2021, same time, that is March, you have a happy problem in which you must now adapt to the future. And now you need to take fresh guard of what risks are before you, what is your financial capacity, and what kind of emotional capacity you need to bring now. Your portfolio is obviously bigger than it was last year, right? Or it has recovered from where it was last year. Now you need to prepare in a way in which you protect what you have and you gradually think of how you can grow what you have. Achievements should be captured, it should be maintained, and it should be grown. So that is something which can be done only by managing the investment risks in your portfolio. So now we are going to discuss the happy problem. The common question that I find investors asking advisors and experienced peers: should I exit? What should I buy? Is what I own good? Where can I get the highest returns? Can I switch from other asset classes like debt or fixed deposits to equity? These are 5 questions that I generally observe being raised in the public domain. Now, should I exit is the first question. This clearly shows that the investor has a distinct trader mindset. I came in, I got out, and I know when to get in, is the mindset. In my opinion, if you got in 2020, congratulations, great show. But to think that you can do it all the time is a bit of a stretch. So if you exit, you have to have extraordinary skills to know when to re-enter. So a total exit is not something which is advised because it may reduce your entire asset class level exposure to equity. That is not a wise thing to do. So asking that should I exit question draws me to the simple answer that you need to moderate your exposure and not exit. The next question, what should I buy? Now this question should usually be asked of the right people when the markets are really low. Even if they say I won't buy, you can ask them, if you will buy, what will you buy? When somebody says I won't buy when the markets are low, it shows his risk appetite. That's all. It doesn't show his assessment of good companies. So you can still seek the assessment of good companies in the market low. But now if you ask the same question, what should I buy? Most people will give you answers which are much weaker than they were 1 year ago. It's nothing to do with their attributes. It has to do with the availability of attractive investment opportunities in equity. We don't have too many. So if somebody tells you what to buy today, it will definitely be a weaker idea than what they told you in the same period last year. So asking this question now itself is not well timed. I believe that this is not the time to go too aggressively on what to buy. So that brings us to the next question. Okay, you're not very desperate to buy, you're not over keen to buy. So what should you next ask? Is what I want good? This is a very important question, and it will help you manage risk in your portfolio. How? Generally, I have noticed that in a market which is rising, between the beginning of the rise and the peak, the investor's portfolio quality actually deteriorates. More returns, lower portfolio quality is something that I have seen. So when this happens, the investor mostly focuses on just changing his ideas and going towards owning what is not as good as what they sold. So what you sell is actually better than what you buy. When you do this for 1 year, what you own will not be as good as it was 1 year ago. That is something which an investor should worry about right now. And you need to focus on portfolio quality. Where can I get the highest returns is the fourth question. I believe this question should not be asked now. Where can I get the safest return is the question that should be asked now. So most people who are asking where can I get the highest returns are actually going to make riskier choices and increasing risk in a way which will not help them manage it well. Why do I say that this question is inappropriately timed? Because the market rise is actually liquidity driven, and whenever markets keep rising on liquidity, seeking highest returns can end badly when the tide turns. So while we don't know when the tide will turn, closer to that we need to be safer and safer and safer. So you need to keep on increasing your safety going forward. So this is no time to ask question, where can I get the highest returns? You have to look at where can I get the safest returns. The answer to this question is very simple. You need to have a mix of assets where equity will still be a component and you will get optimal returns. You cannot get the highest returns. So people who are racing the Nifty today are probably heading for an accident, and it's not worth it. Can I switch from other classes to equity? This is another thing I noticed in every market cycle. Again, now when fixed deposit return comes down, people want to move to equity, because at the same time as fixed deposit returns are low, we also find that the returns from equity, whether it's Nifty or individual portfolios, looks very good based on the recent performance. Because as interest rates go down, equity assets get better value. But at the bottom, when the interest rates is at its turning point, equity assets are at the peak or very close to the peak. So that is not the time when you should switch aggressively from other asset classes to equity. You need to still seek safety. So switching from other asset classes to equity should be done very, very carefully, very, very gradually and incrementally. You need to do it over a period of time. You should not sell a house and bring all your investments into equity in one day. It has to happen very, very gradually and smoothly. And whatever investments you buy should be very value driven. So now we are going to the next slide, which is what should we be focusing on right now? The markets are generally chasing trends. The trends began in March of 2020. The first trend was in FMCG. The second trend was in pharma. Then the trend moved to the private financials. Then it moved to NBFCs. Then you had the rush in infra companies. Now we have commodities ruling the roost. We also have a very, very strong thrust in small, mid, and micro caps. So overall, you are seeing that the market is gradually becoming a secularly positive market. So everything is going up. So whatever you want will all go up. So in that time, what should you be focusing on? Firstly, you need to focus on how to think differently. So you need to basically try and move away from what has already peaked out. Let me give an example. Last year, there was absolute consensus on FMCG. You saw Britannia at 4,000 plus. You had Nestle very close to 18,000. You had HLL almost touching 2,700 rupees. And all these companies were very, very fancy. With the exception of ITC, everything was at a peak. And at that time, everybody was looking at how they can profit from FMCG or how they can own exposure to FMCG. That was a time actually to move away from FMCG. Similarly, probably the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021 is the time to think differently on pharma. There's absolute consensus time to think differently. Similarly, the budget period was probably a time to think differently on private financials. So each space is seeing the peaking out, and there is a need to think differently on each space. So now you are seeing people gradually beginning to look at public sector and disinvestment and reforms as a story. From consumption-oriented investing, We are moving towards investment-oriented approaches, which means that you need to focus on asset creation and how companies can benefit from it. Some companies have benefited enormously. You've seen the multiple grow from 12 to 100, like those who supply capital goods to industries in a high growth phase. You've seen that in pharma, you've seen that in ethanol, you've seen that in many places. That is how we need to think differently. So now, if you look at what are the companies that are going to benefit, those that are going to have very high operating leverage from here will benefit more than those who had operating leverage last year, because last year's operating leverage cannot be sustained in consumption. But in the investment side, we could well see a lot of asset creation happening over the next 1 or 2 years as government drives disinvestment and reform. So you need to think differently, and you need to raise your liquidity so that you are able to capture those opportunities. You need to have cash. So today, if you are fully invested in FMCG and pharma and you are giving yarn about how what happened in the last 1 year is going to be fairy tale forever, you will not raise liquidity and you will not be ready for any correction or any opportunity that comes your way. Remember that those who are invested in the market earlier and had liquidity were the only ones who participated in that correction. Those who did not have liquidity had no chance of participating in it. Of course, having the risk appetite is secondary and having the conviction is a third thing. But without liquidity, nothing will move. So you need to actually raise your liquidity, and you need to create a different risk construct. You need to view risk differently. Today, what was defensive 12 months ago is probably looking riskier to me. And what looked very risky 12 months ago will probably be less risky today. That is the turn of economic events and circumstances. So you need to have a different risk construct today, and that is what will help you, do better in your future choices. You had a great run in the last 1 year. You made returns. You've done exceptionally well. What should you be doing with those returns? I think that you should be protecting those returns. Protecting returns should be a primary goal of an investor who has done extremely well. And even if somebody has come back from the bottom, he needs to raise his liquidity levels and protect his returns so that he is preparing himself for future opportunity and can take fresh risk as and when opportunity presents itself. Lastly, I think watermarking is not just for professionals, it's for individual investors also. If your portfolio has reached a high, find ways in which you can stay closer to that high and beat it in the near future, even if the market falls. How can you do that? You can only do that by raising liquidity, because that liquidity will help you invest again whenever there's a correction. If you fail to create liquidity now, what will happen? Your portfolio will fall with the market, and then you have to fight the market again to come back. Importantly, you will have to create new themes. You have to create liquidity at the bottom. You have to your returns would not be protected, and you will not be able to think differently when the correction happens. Remember, for a lot of people, it happened in 2020. Don't let that happen again, which means try your best to watermark your gains by creating liquidity, raising it, lowering your risk, protecting your returns, and effectively watermarking. Now we go to the next point in this presentation. The case for an investment reset. Why should you create an investment reset? What is an investment reset? Okay, if buying FMCG and pharma and private banks was a great idea 1 year ago, the case for them is not the same today. The market has to change before the economy changes. In the case of 2020, the market actually changed very quickly, whereas it is unlikely that the market will ever change as speedily as it did in 2020. The reason is that you don't have such an event prospect every year. You get such an event once in several decades, like COVID. So we need to understand that the markets won't reset on their own like they did last year. So investment resets have to be done by the investor. You can't allow the market to do that. There are people who think that passive will do the job for them. I wish them well. But I am talking about people who want to do something which involves their own investment thinking, understanding of investments, and strategies. So if you want that, then you should think about an investment reset. Now, why do we have a case for a strong reset? Or how strong is the case for a reset? Firstly, I find recency bias too high. For example, 10 years ago, when we talked about chemicals, no one will look at them. Even 3 years back, no one looked at them. When you talked about buying industrial goods, those who supply to capital goods, consumables, just 2 years back in 2018, no one was interested. Whereas today, everybody is interested. When you look at gas as a team 2 years ago, no one was interested. I remember making a talk that you should not buy private banks. Instead, you should buy those who are going to have benefit from financialization of savings. No one looked at it. Today, everybody looks at it. So I think the recency bias in our minds is very high. Probably it's at the highest post 2000 right now. So that itself is a good case for an opportunity-seeking investor to rethink and to position himself for the future. Clearly, teams are shifting. Those who tom the teams have gone quiet. It means that either they have no use for the team anymore, or they are going to come to you with a new team. They're just taking a gap so that you forget that old team, or the old team gets reset on its own. So it's better the investor in you does the thematic shift rather than wait for somebody to tell you that it's time for a thematic shift. So it's better we take control and we look at what will benefit in the future thanks to the speedy reforms, the changes, the investment by global companies in India, the restarting of the Indian capex cycle and the investment cycle by existing Indian players. The third case for investment reset is valuations. You are still having an extremely polarized market. We have had a polarized market for a very long time. You had your favorite sectors which are all at very high valuations, and those in the doghouse which were at relatively lower valuations than their historic multiples. For example, in January last year, pharma was in the doghouse. Its multiple was significantly at a discount to historic multiple. Today, it's at a significant premium to the historic multiple. Same case with FMCG over a slightly longer period. Financials are probably at the peak compared to historic multiples. So when you have such a case of valuations being at a premium to the historic multiple, it means that some form of protection is needed for us against mean reversion. You cannot just wait that everything will be a hunky-dory and nothing bad will happen. You can't put your hand around your chest like in Amir Khan's film and say all is well. You have to protect your portfolio valuation levels. And that is where the role of liquidity is very important, because you have an objective of having more liquidity. You can raise your liquidity and you can pare down your investments gradually, especially in where the performance has been superior and your allocations have gone higher and out of control. In those areas, you can definitely take some profits and keep increasing your liquidity. So the case for an investment reset is based on the following points, and I'm going to summarize this slide for you. Recency bias is running high. Thematic shifts keep happening in the market. Your thematic shift should happen before the market's thematic shift, and you should be able to second guess it. Third, valuations are running high in several parts of your portfolio. It's good to take some profits off the table and increase liquidity so that it can play a positive role whenever you get a better investment opportunity in the future. Now we go to the next slide. What should we be focusing on right now? So that is what I'm going to say. So sorry. Do we know what we are investing for now? That is what I should be telling you now. I think we are investing to protect our profits, to ensure our portfolio is reasonably watermarked to where we are right now. Let's say the drawdown won't be too high if there's a correction. To ensure that we have liquidity to participate in new themes which are emerging, to participate in the investment boom that India is likely to see in the next 5 years, and to ensure that we make that shift from one market context to another well in time. If you are late, you are going to pay a premium to participate in that. Effectively, we need to move towards that right now. So we should know what we are investing for, and that is future opportunity. It is important that each of you understand that in your portfolio. It is very important that you need to reduce exposure of single scripts to manageable levels. It is important that you control sectoral exposure. They should not become a risk in the future. It is critical that you pair your positions where they are overgrown. It is important for you to identify new positions, new themes, new sectors, new companies, and then work on them. It is important for you to study and prepare so that you are ready when opportunity arises. You need to protect all the good things that have happened to you in the last 12 months, because those good things are rewards for future economic performance. They are not rewards for investment intelligence. They are not rewards for our stock picking skills. They are rewards for future economic performance, which have come early. Why did they come early? They came early because liquidity started to increase dramatically around the world. With so much liquidity, it was natural that asset prices would inflate. Equity asset prices have inflated more than other asset prices. Now, going forward, we need to understand that the same level of liquidity will not sustain forever. There will be a time when governments will have to gradually move away from this level of liquidity. There is also a prospect that this liquidity will seek other more attractive asset classes. We already saw the boom in commodities, which quickly followed the boom in equities. It is possible that this boom in commodities can spread to other asset classes like real estate also. So we should know that we are investing in a context where liquidity is driving asset prices more than economic fundamentals, where liquidity is driving asset prices. And when the liquidity has a definite prospect of reducing in the future, we should prepare for that time when reduction will start, which means closer to that time, our risk level should be lower. We should have more defensive assets. We should probably have good exposure to something like gold. We should ensure that our real estate asset is not too low in our overall exposure. So those are things that we should be investing for now. We should be investing to protect. We should be investing to watermark our investment performance. If we are able to do all these things, then I believe that we will be better prepared for any market correction, and we will be better prepared to carry our investment success of 2020 forward. Every bull market throws up huge number of successful investors, but at the end of the bull market, they lose their success and actually become failures. We are investing now to ensure that we retain our success and avoid becoming failures when the market context changes. Success is a habit. It is something that is grown through behavior. And unless we are able to get the right behavior, we will not be able to retain our success and grow our success. Our investment ideas are relatively more incidental to our success than behavior. It's very important now to understand that we must get our behavior right when the markets are in euphoric mood. It's important that the individual investor takes control of his future, takes control of his portfolio, ensures that its quality doesn't deteriorate. If he doesn't find the right quality, raises liquidity, lowers risk, and prepares for the emerging economic context. Start thinking differently, and you will find opportunity. Now, I will open the field for questions, and you can type your questions, and I will answer to the best of my ability. What is your opinion on perpetual bond of good quality? Perpetual bonds are a HNI product. The bet is on the groups very clearly when you buy a perp. If the promoter has a very good track record and the company has good history, then you can buy perpetual bond. It's a HNI product. It is not meant for small savers. Only people who don't require liquidity must look at perpetual bonds. Put money in a perpetual bond where you don't worry about liquidity. You're not going to need that money in a hurry. what money you don't need to consume in the next few years, you can put in a perpetual bond. But other than that, you must be very circumspect in the bonds you buy, in the quality of promoters, and in the continuing solvency of such companies. So that is something that you should be always careful about. Business groups which back their companies strongly are generally better placed to service perpetual bonds, and then generally they are a better choice in buying perpetual bonds. Where it failed is in cases like Yes Bank, where there was no business group really. So you need to be very careful. Or in other wherever it has failed, you'll find there'll be no business group, there'll be no promoter worth his salt backing the entity. So where there's a very strong promoter group backing the entity, perps are relatively stable. Currently, large caps are highly valued. So how to handle these kind of higher value stocks? When you don't find value, you have to sell or not buy. That is your choice. If value is too high, for example, I felt that Hindustan Lever at 2,700, Nestle at 18,000, Asian Paint at 2,800, Titan at current price are all good sells. But this is a personal choice. So it's up to you to decide whether you want to take profit off the table. Generally, I believe in taking profit off the table when valuations are too high and leaving some profits for somebody who's going to take the risk at that level. After all, when I sell, I am transferring risk to a buyer. I am okay with rewarding him a little bit. I don't want the last penny to be drained out of the investment. It's not as if we can get all the profits out of an investment and the next guy will be the loser. I think that mindset is not a healthy mindset, and never believed in that. So I believe in exiting a company when the valuations are very high, and I leave the investment to the next person who's going to take a much higher risk than I did. Good luck to him. So that is my approach. So I would like to take money off the table and leave the investment in the hands of somebody who has a higher risk capacity. So that is how I would handle high valuation in stocks, in large caps. Do you think Bitcoin has eaten up gold's lunch? Why gold is falling? Gold's fall is largely quite surprising, but I don't believe that Bitcoin can really sustainably, become what people think it can. So I would safely stay away from it. If I miss it, it's all right. You can't be present in every party in town. So this is one party I don't want to go to, because I feel that it can well end up in a very ugly way. So I want to go to parties which are relatively simpler and more enjoyable and more peaceful and less noisy. I think that gold is a less noisy party to be in. And today the party is empty. There's nobody there. And it makes sense. It's not going away or out of fashion anytime soon, because as a commodity, its production is not growing. So I like that aspect. So if demand goes up, then you can see gold perform. So that's on gold. I think silver has seen a lot of stupidity because of this social media groups, Reddit and all that. So I don't think silver is behaving rationally. So someday silver will come back to rationality. Silver's irrationality is on the other extreme as gold, which is surprising, because generally they hunt in tandem. This time they have diverged significantly. So I would personally avoid silver and stick to gold. Should I? Sorry, I'm just reading the questions. Just give me some questions, some time to read the questions. How to identify thematic shift, what to read, and kindly conduct in program in Tamil. Yeah, I will do that later. This is my first English program, so I thought this topic was interesting. So theme shift, I think that today government selling businesses is a great theme, because the same business in the hands of a private entrepreneur will move faster, bigger decisions will be taken, will have more hunger for growth. I don't think an IAS officer running a company has the same hunger for growth as a Tata. So obviously the change will be high. So we have seen that. I've seen how sleepy companies like Hindustan Zinc have been transformed over the last 17, 18 years. And it's true of many, many entities. So I expect that to repeat, and history will repeat. So it will repeat over a longer period of time. So probably the entry of private players into many areas and growing share in those areas can be an opportunity. For instance, last year there was no tourism. This year, there are fewer players and tourism will explode. So that is an opportunity. So that's a thematic shift in my opinion. Similarly, we could see engineering, electronics, textile, wherever there's going to be PLI, there could be a thematic shift towards those areas. So that is an opportunity. So it's very easy to identify themes. See where the investments are going to be heavy, and you will get the benefits over 4 to 5 years. So you start following the team, and whenever you think the valuations are attractive and you're finding good ideas, you can buy. Give yourself time. But the teams are already before us. Start focusing on them. If some stocks are highly appreciated, how do you induce? It's very simple. Let's say you bought a stock for 3% of your portfolio, it became 10% of your portfolio, or even higher. You decide that you will keep pairing it, and you suppose your position is 10%, you keep selling 10% of that. So you will sell 1%, then again another percent. Slowly, as the price keeps moving, you start reducing the position and start raising your cash. Whenever the valuation looks crazy, sell more and reduce it to very manageable levels. I'll give you an example. We had pharma exposure of 20% in January 2020. Today we have 5%. So as it went up, we kept selling and we kept reducing our exposure in the pharma funds. It's a thematic shift out of pharma. And as we got out of one theme, we also identified the next theme and we waited. Now, is this wait going to be easy? Certainly not. It took us 3 years in pharma to get to a position where it starts throwing profits. So any theme is equal to wait. If you can't wait, you can't get the themes right. You have to wait. So when you're doing a thematic shift and when you're trying to reduce your portfolio risk, first you take money out of a successful investment stock or theme, keep the money, and then find the next one. As your conviction grows in the next one, you gradually buy that. That's how you can do this. Selling fully, no, I didn't suggest selling fully. Sell gradually, keep selling as the valuation becomes crazier and crazier, take more money off the table. So even if the stock turns and falls, you will still be left with a smaller position and it won't matter to your overall portfolio. That is how you need to reduce your position. I think, see, if a stock has increased 4x, you have to see whether the earnings has gone up 4x. If only the PE ratio has gone up 4x, it makes sense for you to de-risk. It's not, the earnings will catch up, but at the time the PU may not maintain. That's the point. So tomorrow's performance can get captured today. That is what a 4x or a 5x means. For example, if I bought a Cera Sanitary at 2012 and I sold it in 2018 at 3,300, it's still at the same price, 2021. In between, it keeps going up and down. What I found in 2018 is good performance already captured, fully captured. So somebody is paying an exorbitant premium for that performance. So even if the company performs well, it's already in the price. So probably in some of these stocks which are appreciated many times, future performance is already captured in the stock price, and it's good for you to consider that at the stock level and then make your own informed decisions. But conceptually, this is what I infer. I think this past performance of gold, past performance of gold lending companies, past performance of gold jewelry companies, none of these can be extrapolated from here into the future. The whole gold lending business is in for a massive digital reset. Interest rates on gold should be not more than 7 or 8%. I'll tell you why. It's fully secured. Why should somebody pay 24% for a gold loan? It's ridiculous. There should be no pawnbroking in this country. That's the real social justice. And it's going to happen in the next 5 years. Digitally, gold lending is going to go places, and people are going to be able to get cheaper loans digitally, where they have a digital format where you can negotiate a loan, go into your bank, and then get your jewels evaluated, and the money will be in your bank account within a minute. So I think that this whole system will get reset, and I think gold lending, jewelry are businesses which are going to be disrupted massively in the next few years, and that's something which you need to keep in mind. So looking at what happened in the past performance in these companies will not help. That is my personal opinion. The choice between a jeweler and a gold is a simple choice. I think it's not one or other. It's probably a mix. But you should find a very good jeweler to invest in. For example, if you bought Titan after demonetization, it is a very good time. It is a window which gave us a chance to buy. But you don't get that opportunity too often. Today, it's a 5x from there. But when you get that opportunity, you should catch it. So, whereas buying gold now is, in my opinion, not a very difficult decision. Buying plain gold today without jewelry is not a very difficult decision. It's a very simple decision. And I believe in that decision personally. Other than buying land, what are the other options for real estate exposure? You can start understanding REITs. You can start understanding InvITs. Those are asset plays. But don't rush to invest. Understand each investment, then understand the risk in the investment. Discuss with peers about the plus and minus of investing in real estate through products. And once you are convinced that one or two products pass the bill, then make some investments, gradually keep increasing your investments. That is what I will suggest from real estate point of view. Should I use gold as a hedge in a portfolio? I think so. I think because interest rates are also low, you can use gold. Gold is equal to cash. So from that perspective, it's not a bad idea. But if you are even risk averse to buying gold, then you should stick to cash. I am not risk averse. That's all I will say. I feel that gold is a good asset class. It is required to be in your asset allocation now. How do you think of position size in my personal portfolio? Well, I am buying private equity, so I'm not buying. I don't find too many micro caps which are attractive. The impact cost of entering a micro cap for me is more than 40-50%. So I don't believe in paying such impact cost. So I will wait, and I'm not in any hurry to buy any micro cap now. I don't find anything screaming at me. Whatever I own, I just keep. So position sizing, it should be not more than 5%. That is how I will think about it. Position a portfolio of a microcap can't be more than 5%. I prefer has, in fact, a much smaller number going forward. As a moderate risk, what percentage of portfolio? It depends on your risk appetite, how you want to protect yourself. I think having 10 to 15% is a very comfortable. So if you are having a risk appetite that matches that, you can buy them. You can keep increasing your exposure as the price comes down. The price is very low now. If it gets even lower, you can buy more. That's how I would say. So, which are the teams we are bullish on? Okay, this is not about I thought. This platform is not meant for what I thought is bullish on. But broadly, we want businesses which have a higher growth potential, which can give better economic benefits to more people. So it has to touch the lives of more people. So in that sense, you're in. All new age businesses, service businesses, infra, these are all businesses which generally we like. We think that India will go through an investment boom, so there will be demand for commodities as well in our country. So those who are efficient producers should do reasonably well. So that is broadly where we are. We are bullish on reforms as a team. So if the government sells more companies, I think those companies will do very well in the future. So we are betting on that as well. So gold, we are bullish as a team. So broadly, if you ask me, from my personal perspective, these are the teams that I like. I thought can have some other things also. Each person can have their own perspective, which they will add layers to in that team. That's a separate subject. No, I don't have a top-down approach alone. I am a bottom-up investor, but I remember top-down because top-down is what creates the cycles in the economy. There are two cycles, one economic cycles, two industry cycles. If you are able to catch the industry cycle in an advantageous place, when the economic cycle goes up, that industry should benefit and we should make maximum returns. So if you get your economic cycle wrong and the industry cycle wrong, then you will have to wait for a long period. So that is basically how I look at it. Top down, you write down what the governments around the world will do. How do you grow your top down approach? You please write out what countries are going to do macroeconomically. Are they going to print money? How are they going to manage inflation? Then your top down thesis will come, whether liquidity will go down or up in the world. If it will go down, then asset prices will cool down. If it will go up, then asset prices will remain buoyant. From there, you start your hypothesis. The rest, you will come to industry level and you will understand how that will affect the industry, and then to the company level. That's how you can write. There are no books that I think most of my learning is through experience. I have not really followed any individual book or person. I think that each person should evolve according to what their personality is. Investing is a very personality driven pursuit. So you have to understand your personality and evolve. So I don't think books can teach. That's why I refuse to discuss even ideas, because some of these ideas may suit my personality. I may wait 5 years, not make any returns, and still exit because I thought it's worth taking that chance. But you may not be able to take that chance. So it's not really something where we should generalize. It should be very individual specific. Mutual fund investing. It's the same thing. You have to do it asset class level, move from a more expensive sector or team to a less to move value. Basically, you need to move towards value. So you can't say that mutual funds you need not touch at all. It's not like the Hero Honda had fill it, shut it, forget it. No. You need to have a response to every economic context. And when things become too good in too short a time, you need to protect your portfolio, you need to protect your capital, you need to watermark. So if you need to watermark, you have to move from a higher risk product to a lower risk product by booking your long-term profits. I don't say that you should trade, but at least some long-term profits you can take out and you can stabilize your mutual fund portfolio as well. Which is safe investment sector, Nifty, which ETF? See, I think that first of all, I think the 2021 is not a year for safe investment. It's going to be a year when investments become riskier. That's the first point. Now, when investments become riskier, how will it reflect in the Nifty? Nifty will become more volatile. That's the first point. So, if you want to be a Nifty investor, you have to accept that a lot of future returns may already have got captured in the Nifty. Maybe 1 or 2 years of performance is already in the Nifty, which means that you must be, if you want to invest in Nifty ETF, you have to invest for next 2 years without any returns. You have to be ready for that, or low returns. So that is my thing on Nifty. Sectoral, you need to have very good understanding of the sector and conviction. And you can never buy sectoral ETF based on past performance. You have to buy when the past performance is very, very unattractive. So if you bought sectoral ETF in pharma last year, you would have made a lot of money. If you buy this year, I'm not so sure. So you should be very careful about these things. Best place to park our liquid fund. I think liquid debt is the best place to park your liquid cash or fixed deposit. Gold, if you want to take higher risk, it all depends upon what is your investment tenure. If you're not going to touch the money for a long time, that will have one type of choices. As you change your investment duration, the choices change. So it's a mix. All the products listed are okay, but I would not go and buy higher risk products now, or products which will be affected by directional change in interest rates. I will try to avoid. So that is something that I'll be very careful. Which newspaper, journal, magazine? I don't read any magazines anymore. I've stopped reading magazines. Magazines have lost their relevance, but they're good for investors who are beginners. I'll tell you why. A lot of the analysis is dated, but still it is chronicle. So when they write about companies, if you want to understand about a company, reading a magazine article is a good way. But I find it very repetitive, so I don't read the magazines anymore. I read all the papers, all the business papers. I read all the papers. Blogs, I don't know whether blogs are really educative. A lot of blogs which are celebrated 10 years back have withdrawn. Actually, people have taken the blog down. It's very surprising, actually. Which means they are ashamed to show what they have written 10 years back. I feel blogging is in investing, except a few guys globally who tell you what you already know. I'm not very excited about blogs. I don't think Warren Buffett's investments are forever. He used to say it's forever, but I think that he makes a lot of changes. At his age, he must be in a hurry to get his ideas right. It's natural. So I don't think we should compare ourselves with what he does. I think that we should be very circumspect in how we manage our investments. Maybe if you find some ideas which are forever, you can keep them. But I have never seen a reason for that. I keep changing. When should one exit a stock completely? If the next 5 years performance is already captured in the stock price, I will exit completely. If the next 5 years, that's how I exited. When the next 5 years earnings is already captured in the stock price and I am getting the reasonable multiple, I should get 5 years later today itself, I will exit. I see a lot of companies in that zone. So I will exit those companies. If my stock investment has not played the theme, what would you? Wait for the next thematic cycle. If you missed one thematic cycle, don't chase it. Wait for the next one. How does risk play in? Risk is everything in asset allocation. See, for example, today, if somebody is reducing risk and not raising the market, which is driven by liquidity, it's good for you. Whereas, if you're chasing return, you want to be in the market trade till the last minute, you'll end up making a loss. Most people who compare returns with benchmark and all that never go to safety. Safety comes at a price, it's not free. We are actually conceding returns to somebody who takes greater risk and who doesn't mind making a loss. So, in that sense, we are giving it to somebody else. We don't want that risk. So, I think that today in asset allocation, what we get is lowering of risk. We are able to protect our returns. We are able to consistently beat inflation over very long periods of time and comfortably too, and we don't lose our sleep. So, risk is very important in how it is managed, and it helps that asset allocation manages risk much better than anything else. Generally, bull markets are into 3 stages. First stage, recovery, crazy bar market low, steady improvement along with improvement economy, usually a longer duration compared to the third stage, speculative newcomers pour in. I think these 3 stages in the current market got compacted into one. It's like it is a meltdown, right? In meltdown, everything comes together. So I believe that this market has attracted enormous new talent. It has brought in very high trading and speculative culture. It has created an IPO boom. It has created enormous liquidity. It has again made returns scarce. Making, if you're risk averse, you can't make even 9% return, right? You have to take crazy risk to make that 9% return. So, in that sense, this market is already a speculative market. It's already a market where newcomers or fearless control narratives. It's a market where narratives control investing. And so we crossed all this first and second stage very fast. And we are probably at the third stage. Yes, there will be some teams which are in the first or second stage, which will do well over 4 to 5 years. If you are able to identify those teams, then you have to play those separately from the overall market cycle. For example, I played building materials between 2010 and 2018. I'm not playing it now. So if you want to play building material again now, probably you started last year, then you have to play it for a very long time. But the stock market has already taken everything into the price. So you have to know how you want to manage that risk. My approach would be to move to safety when everything is factored in. And today, a lot of things seem to be factored in such themes. That is my observation. Will equal weight Nifty give good investment during coming years? Actually, we have tried equal weight Nifty. It was very difficult, but then it has started performing. So it's early days yet, but it's relatively a low risk product. I will say that. And you need to invest in it for long periods of time. That's the second point. How to assess the real need of real value of a stock? No, that can't be answered in one webinar. You have to do a lot of reading. I think that you have to just understand which stock is overvalued and then see which other stocks look like it. At least you'll have some benchmark. So when you see overvalued stocks, you'll be able to compare other stocks and identify which of them. That's a simple way to learn, and then you will become better at it. Physical, ETF, or bond. I don't like physical. I like only ETF or bonds, one of the two, or both actually. Is it a better alternative to invest in commodity stocks at this overvalued market? Should be gold? See, commodity stocks are cheap but they represent higher risk and higher returns. So if you expect the economy to continue growing, it's a macroeconomic call. If you expect investments to grow around the world, then demand for commodities will come back. If that happens, then commodity stocks will continue to do well because their investment cycle in India is over. So they're only going to have operating leverage going forward. But if realizations go down, demand slumps, and just like commodity fell last year, you're going to see another fall in 1 or 2 years, then the cycle time for returns will become much longer. That is what you need to remember when you look at commodity stock. My asset allocation is irrelevant because each person's asset allocation is according to his life context. If I'm 21, I'll have a high asset allocation to equity, right? If I'm 75, I'll probably have lower asset allocation, very low asset allocation to equity. But you can still be 90 like Warren Buffett with very high asset allocation. It's personal. It's who you are growing your wealth for and what you're going to do with it and how you want to, migrate it after you. So that's it. You can't have one asset allocation for everybody. EV is still an open market. Nobody knows, but Ola is making a lot of noise. But EV will disrupt, just like smartphones. EV will disrupt. I have no doubt in it. I had an opportunity to see one EV product thanks to some investor friends of mine, which is a high-speed motorcycle. I was deeply impressed. If somebody can create such a product in 5 years, it's remarkable. And I'm sure the capital like Ola or Bajaj or others will create such products. Yes, I think that is possible. As far as Bajaj is concerned, they're using their global partners. And Hero also has Ather, in which they have investments. And I think Ather is a super product. So probably all these guys will all come together. Their collaborative investments will be their future drivers. It's like they made these investments as an option, but that option will become the centerpiece. And I think that is going to happen over the next 5-7 years. That's certain. What indicators should we look at to understand when I don't know any indicators. Valuations are high. That's about it. If valuations are high, we move to safety. If we move early to safety, so be it. You don't have to stay in every party till every drunkard falls dead, right? Or starts wobbling. You can choose to leave at a decent hour and go and catch a good night's sleep. Similarly, in investing, euphoria is the party which you can leave when you feel comfortable leaving. So if you are the type who wants to stay to see all the ruckus, it's up to you. But if you're the guy who wants to play it safer and leave a little earlier than the ruckus starts, it's your choice. So that's how you should leave a party. So thank you very much. I think we have come to the end of this session. I really appreciate all of you for participating in this session. What is iThought Wealth? I'll just give a brief introduction. So I have always been an investor who shared what I learned with peers. In our early years, these are all in small groups. I was lucky that many senior investors were kind enough to share with me, and that was what contributed to my growth as an investor. But for their constructive role, I don't think I would have been what I became. Similarly, I have learned from them and done the same thing over the years in smaller forums, where 10 people, 20 people. We never aspired to have lakhs of people following and all that. But even like going every Saturday to a place, sitting and talking to 20 people is something I did for 3 years, between 12 and 15, when I was in the Tamil Nadu Investor Association. Later, I have been doing it briefly. I had a very brief experience with the television, which ended very badly. I think they didn't respect what skills I had, and I felt that I was the wrong place. So I decided not to go on television, and I avoided that for the last several years. Subsequently, I felt that I still have a responsibility, and I should do it in a way away from my business. So we choose to create 2 platforms, one in Tamil and one in English. This is the English platform, where I will be putting out generic videos on investments. I have a lot of friends in the industry. I requested many of them to talk to me on these platforms. Some of them have agreed to that, and my time permitting, I will slowly do that. This is not a YouTube channel I have started for hits or views or followers. It's for people who want to learn and who are not looking for tips, because I think the best way I can kill an investor is by giving him tips. So that is not my intention. So that is how I thought wealth will be. That is how my Tamil channel will also be. We have had reasonably good response in the Tamil channel. It started very slowly. It's still going very slowly. Similarly, this will also go very slowly. If you like what you see, I would request you to share this idea with your friends. They could participate. We will have webinars at reasonable frequency on subjects which are generic. I am not going to give any stock tips. I am not going to show how good I am as a stock investor. That is not the objective of this platform. Nor am I trying to show how good I thought is in its business. This platform is not meant for that. This is meant to talk generic, useful, educative content to the public. So if you like the idea, please support it by sharing it with your friends and by participating in events like this. And thank you for your valuable time on a Saturday. Thank you very much.